The days were long and lonely in my little concrete square. I was, at that time, a little skinny and a little scared, and my fluffy coat so overgrown I could barely see through my fringe. I tried every trick in the book to grab the humans' attention as they'd walk by my cage, but try as I might, every day would be the same. The occasional pat and praise only to be overlooked for adoption. It was a lonesome existence. One extraordinary day, a man walked by my cage, and having caught a glimpse of me playfully rolling around, knelt and looked into my eyes. I tried my best to show him the willingness I had to join him. I wagged my tail and licked his hand through the cold metal bars. Something in him must have clicked, because just like that, I was being led out of my isolated concrete prison and taken to complete routine checks before being freed. My tail thumping excitedly, I bolted towards my new human. That was the day I was adopted. That was the day I became a part of a family. Looking back, I came to realize we were a perfect fit for each other, and it was me who set him free of his own cage. I had been selected as a companion for my new human, but little did I know that I was to be a catalyst for the formation of new friendships and become a conduit to social support networks for him. You see, being a professional young man in a fast-paced modern world, he had struggled to create meaningful human-to-human relationships and was plagued by social anxiety, isolation, and loneliness. Immediately, I perceived he was outcast and alone. It wasn't hard to tell, judging from the way he'd skirt around strangers in the street and stood by himself in the park. I sensed he was proud and unable or unwilling to ask for help. It seemed his loneliness was an especially tricky problem because accepting and declaring it carried profound stigma amongst humans. Admitting he was lonely felt as if he'd admitted to failing in life's most fundamental areas: belonging, love, and attachment. Adopting me, in some ways, was a way to overcome that loneliness, whilst submitting to a basic instinct to save face. He later confided in me that he knew he wasn't alone in this. Apparently, 25% of the human population were also lonely and experiencing high levels of social anxiety, and over 50% of their population felt they regularly lacked companionship. Some time after we'd been brought together, he described to me the particularly rough patch in the weeks leading up to my adoption. Work had become increasingly difficult. He'd been instructed to work from his one-bedroom unit, and with no housemates to talk to and little reason to venture outside, it culminated in a hellish week for him. His sleep was disrupted, his immune system in tatters, his stress levels had gone through the roof, and his body had become inflamed throughout. I think on some level, he realized he needed help and instinctively knew an animal could alleviate some of his troubles. I was, naturally, the most popular choice for a companion by far, with around 40% of human households already accepting a dog into their families by that stage. It didn't take long for me to love and adore him. It's without doubt the feelings of love were mutually shared, although initially his demeanor was reserved and he laughed little. As our bond grew, he started to emerge from his shell, and I made it my mission to make him smile. Often, he'd laugh as I'd roll around on the ground with my legs in the air and my tongue lolling out to the side. The joy of seeing him return home often proved too much, and I'd lunge in for a kiss immediately as he entered. It never failed in planting a smile on his face. His mental and particularly physical health improved quickly as he'd regularly have to sprint after me when I'd bolt towards a shiny new object that had caught my eye. He'd talk to me as if I were a human, and while I didn't always understand everything, I knew just by licking his hand or looking up into his eyes that I could calm him down whenever he needed. I noticed, at times, his mood would quickly transform from stressed to happy when he'd pat or cuddle me. I think it's no secret that I enjoyed the pats just as much, and maybe even a teeny bit more if he got that spot right behind my ear. Most importantly, though, I became the icebreaker, so to speak, in social interactions. It became easier for him to have conversations with strangers, and he slowly got to know people in the neighborhood that would later become friends. While in the park one day, he overheard people chatting about a social pets app linked to the park named Pup Pals. It promised to connect with other dogs and their owners and create opportunities to foster new human and dog friendships. He quickly downloaded it, hoping to meet people in the area and potentially find some new friends. Over time, he'd gotten to know familiar people on our daily walks. They'd wave at each other, and occasionally I'd get a pat or a treat, although it didn't extend much further than that, and he found it difficult to create meaningful connections with these people. Fortunately, through the app, he discovered a community-based listing of all dog walks in the area. Each listing had the usual description and details about the trek, but the best part was that it would guide us in real time. Along the path, pop-ups would appear detailing the antics of other dogs who had been tagged in the spot. Still a little shy and anxious, I know he appreciated interacting with those posts, as he was able to engage with the people without needing to be face to face. When we'd first trotted down the road to our local dog park, he'd hung around the perimeter, gazing in at the obvious bubbles of friendships that existed between dog owners. Couples and groups paraded around, stopped to talk and to greet, and try as he might, he rarely could conjure the confidence to stride over and introduce himself into these groups. After one such failed attempt, he remembered the app had a map displaying all the dog parks he could join in the area. Soon after, he became a virtual member and slowly started contributing to the group chat. Eventually, having built a rapport with another owner through the group, he found the courage to approach them at the park and begin a real friendship. Having created a few fledgling friendships in the area, those owners began to reach out and invite us along to the park for a walk or a quick coffee at a cafe. Still a little paralyzed by anxiety, the thought of going out with these somewhat unfamiliar people, unaided by me, filled him with alarm. Anticipating this to be the case, he checked the app map for dog-friendly businesses in the area to ensure I could stay by his side. He'd relax into the companionship of these people when he knew I'd be around to act as a social buffer. A while later, on a bright sunny day, I'd been sniffing through the shrubs in an unfamiliar area. I'd followed the scent to a piece of meat left on the ground and quickly pounced to gobble it up. Thankfully, my human had been alerted that there were poison baits disguised as treats around the area. He intercepted in the nick of time, pulling my mouth open to fish it out completely. What a close call that was. If I had become sick, I'd hate to think what would have happened. After having come so far already, I'm sure he would have retreated once more into his shell and kept me inside for fear of being poisoned or attacked by larger aggressive dogs. That would have been disastrous. There would have been no walks, no socializing, and none of my all-time favorite fetch. A year had gone by, and he'd slowly but surely become more comfortable around other humans at the park. Now and then, a friendly neighbor would review his profile on the app and connect as a friend, which was terrific news for me. Don't get me wrong, it was great that he was able to make some new friends in the process, but for me, it usually meant more time at the park and running loose with my own new friends. Step by step, my human was slowly emerging from his shell socially. It's not surprising, given his personality, he was not a huge fan of social media. Not one to lay bare his life, he tended to shy away from digital formats, focusing instead on the tangible in front of him. But even he, with all his misgivings, occasionally dressed me up in some ridiculous costume and posted to the app. As much as he'd likely deny it, I think he did enjoy the attention, even if it was just focused on us dogs. During our daily treks around the block, we'd often bump into another human who ran on a similar timetable to us. She'd often frostily hurry past us without a second glance. Still, every time I saw her, I'd wag my tail as she walked past, and once or twice I caught a soft smile directed towards me. Days turned to weeks, and we bumped into her frequently. Her ice-cold exterior slowly melted, and eventually she stopped and bent down to pat my head, encouraging conversation between them. She mentioned to him that she had wanted a companion dog herself, but felt she couldn't due to restrictive renting rules and often being out at night. He opened his phone and showed her the app. He suggested she set up a profile and join the many other non-dog owners who offered to take dogs for a day when they wanted animal companionship without the commitment. The community was great like that. Often owners would post that they were looking for pet sitters, a ride to the vet, or simply to take their pooch for a walk when life got busy, and there were little shortage of willing volunteers. I became excited the next time we bumped into her, as she was accompanied by her own pup. She explained she had used the app to research rules and dog breeds to understand what kind of dog would best suit her lifestyle. She'd been unaware that by law she could have a pet, and after bringing this to her strata, found the middle ground by settling on a quiet, mid-sized breed suitable for an apartment. With the support of the Pup Pal community, she said she felt she could reach out if she ever needed help. After that, everything fell into place. The app had directed her to where she could find the nearest breeder, and soon after she had found her new buddy. We had become fast friends from there on, meeting up regularly at the dog park for a game of fetch. They'd often take us out for a walk down to the local pub, where they'd have a couple of drinks and catch up, and we'd sit on the floor enjoying the attention and pats we'd receive from strangers. As I contently sit here now on my plush new bed, my favorite squeaky toy to my side, and reflect on our journey, I realize it wasn't that long ago that we were both alone and isolated in our own ways. I'm grateful on that fateful day he chose to rescue me from that desolate existence and discovered the support of the Pup Pal community, as it was through them that we were able to settle into a better life. Stepping out of his comfort zone was never something that was going to be easy, but having created meaningful ties with other people, he has become a whole, thriving, and engaged human with a stronger sense of belonging and inclusion. For me, I'm as happy as a pup can possibly be, surrounded by toys, treats, friends, and best of all, my human.